Now, when you say you grew up with Dana, are we talking high school? You guys went to school together? I always wonder what your guys' relationship was. I could tell you guys went way back. But okay, so you know him all the way from high school.
Yeah, exactly.
So, all right, let's get into it, man. Dana White looking for a fight. Now, awesome show, for one. I loved when you were on there. I thought you guys all had good chemistry. You and Dana, Matt, Serra. I thought the whole thing was great. All of a sudden, I'm watching, and you weren't on there, and I just assumed, well, there's a scheduling conflict. Nick does 100 different things. He probably can't just go make every show. And then all of a sudden, a headline comes out. And it was from Matt Serra, and I don't know if he was interviewed somewhere, if it was on his podcast, but he told the story that you weren't coming back to the show, that you had left it, that Dean Thomas was now in, and it all had to do with some filming somewhere, and you and Matt had done a grappling match, or I know I'm close. I'm somewhere along these lines, and all of a sudden you're off the show, and Dean's on the show. Connect the dots here for me. I know I'm close.
No, so he went on Bruce Buffer's podcast and just started airing all this like dirty laundry. And when I heard it, I just sat there and I was like, holy shit. And I tried to think back to any point in my life where I've ever had a situation where anyone that I've ever worked with has done anything like that. And it was, I would have to say, one of the most surreal experiences of my life. Not only being on a show is pretty surreal, but we had done the video blogs. I was used to that. But to have someone talking like this about me to an international audience on Bruce Buffer's podcast, I was like, is this fucking really, can I curse on here?
Absolutely.
Is this fucking really happening? Am I actually in a situation? Now, that was my first reaction. My second reaction was, this is actually pretty dope, man, because I'm being a writer. I don't like to read a lot of writers, whether it's fiction or nonfiction, where I know their life experiences are limited to just being in a library and sitting in front of a computer or a typewriter. And so for me, I've always sought out, whenever I can jump into a weird new experience, I do it, because in some way it's definitely going to find its way into my writing. And so I think it's actually a pretty dope thing. I'm actually stoked about it, but it's still freaking weird. And so, yeah, the whole thing had to do, it didn't have to do with the grappling. When you take a 101 college logic course, one of the first things they teach you about, like a logical fallacy, is the straw man. So the straw man is an argument where there is one principal issue, but then they keep bringing up other issues just to cloud the waters. And so that whole thing about the grappling match had nothing to do with why I left the show at all. That's just a straw man. The reason I left the show was because I'm sorry, I just got a text that came in. So the reason I left the show is because when we did the tasing episode, did you see that?
Yeah, I saw that.
So we all got tased. And someone hit me and informed me. They said, dude, do you realize that Matt didn't really get tased? And I said, what are you talking about? They're like, dude, just watch the video. It's on the video. And so I went back and watched the video, and I was like, holy shit, man. I cannot believe it. So they gave us, before, we had SWAT guys in there that did the whole thing, that told us what was going to go down. And they said, the number one thing with tasing is that you want to shoot someone from far away, because the farther away those prongs go as they travel across distance, the wider of a point you're going to be able to shock someone. So the most optimal, they never get it in the field, but one of the craziest shocks that they could possibly get is from your hand to your ankle. That's going through the entire body. Well, when I looked at when I rewatched the video, Dana's taking it on his upper body, right? I'm taking it from my ankle. It felt like a drill going into my ankle all the way to my other hand. Matt is, just watch the video, is taking it from his neck down to his arm, which means he's getting about 10% of his body. And so I found out about that, and I was like, you know what, man? What the fuck? Just, if I'm going to, and I could care less, Chael, if people laugh at me. I think it's actually something cool. One time we did, I'm going to go off the subject for a second, but one time we did a video, Elliot, who's Dana's video blogger, and I, we did a video where I took a wheelchair and we were like riding it around, and Dana had him cut it for one of the blogs, The Girls Just Want to Have Fun, and it was funny as shit. But in the comments for that video, there was a guy who was terminally ill, and he wrote at length about how much better this video made his life during these last few frickin' time that he had on Earth. And I was like, man, if you can do that with entertainment for one frickin' person, who cares if someone laughs at you? And the reality is the more people you laugh at yourself and other people laugh at you, no one cares. But I did have a principle, which was I'm not going to get ambushed. If you guys, and I talked to him about it after the grappling, listen, I'm not cool with this. If you guys want to set something up and you want to make something funny, just put me in on it. Let me in on it. And so I found out about that. I came to the guys and I said, listen, man, I'm not cool with this. But if you just cop to it, and you don't even have to cop to it in public, just say, yes, this is what happened, then I'll happily come back on the show. They didn't want to do it, so I walked.
So, okay, now that you're saying this, I did read this. You got partway into that, and I did read about that. So they did the taste. That must have hurt so bad on the ankle.
Oh, bro.
Oh, my goodness.
It hurt so... It felt like fucking a drill bit going through my fucking ankle. Dude, I was in shock afterwards. Like, we went out afterwards, and I couldn't even, I was in complete fucking shock. And I always wondered, like, how is it that guys are getting tased and they're just ripping them out of their chest? Well, you rip it out of your chest because you're getting tased from your nipple to your shoulder. That's not really it's not really that effective. That's why they hit those guys again and again. But when they take it to you like that, you never felt pain like that in your life. It was fucking unreal.
Well, Nick, that's what I was going to say is, I mean, there's never been a situation ever where I can't imagine where a cop pulls it out in the heat of the moment and hits a guy in the ankle. I mean, it's ouch. You would have to let them do it, right?
And to the opposite hand. Yeah.
Oh, Jesus.
So anyways, that was just my rule. It was like, listen, man, no matter what situation you go into, it's not like I'm a teenager. You know, I like you said, I'm a lawyer. This is how, you know, I have certain criteria that I'm willing to do things under. But that was it. It's like, listen, if you guys can't tell me what's going to happen beforehand and everything's going to be, you know, then I'm not going to do the show.
Yeah, it's got to be above board. I get it. I could see where feelings would get hurt over that. So they never admitted to it. You got tased. Now, was it a situation where they knew ahead of time, all right, Nick's going to take the brunt of this, and they talked about it, or is it just the way it played out?
I can only speculate. You know, I mean, the cop gave us a half hour like review of, you know, this is what happens. This is why we put the taser so far apart. So these guys were experts. So, you know, as far as my thinking goes, like a lawyer, it's like, okay, the people who are administering this are experts, right? B, they have just given us a lecture on what hurts the most when you get tased. C, I took the most. Matt and I were in the same position on the end. He took it down from the neck to the wrist. I took it all the way across my body. Do I think that was an accident? To me, I don't see. If I was arguing that in court, I don't see how I would lose.
Yeah,
so,
I hear you on that.
Logical progression.
So you saw what got put out, though. So it went in a direction that it had to do with this grappling, whatever event, workout, whatever it was with the grappling. So that's not accurate then. That was misreported.
Yeah, and that was just a straw man that just was put out there to say, listen, this is why he left, because he was so butthurt because I tapped him out 10 times, you know, which makes me laugh because if anybody knows me, I rolled with Joe Lazzone. It's probably the most famous jiu-jitsu match in the history of the world. That thing's been viewed like 1 million times, right, and me getting my ass kicked like Joe Lazzone. And to tell you, ask anybody, I'll tell them that was one of the highlights of my life because I love Joe Lazzone. He's like one of my heroes. So for me to have, what I like about jiu-jitsu is really what I like about surfing. You know, I'm never going to be able to play golf with Tiger Woods. It's not going to happen. I'm never going to be able to play basketball with Michael Jordan. But in jiu-jitsu, I can roll with these guys who are my heroes. Of course they're going to fucking beat me. I'm 48 years old, and I've been rolling for 4 years. You know, I could care less. So,
well, I'll tell you this.
No, that was, like I said, that was just a straw man.
Nick, when I did read about it, that, I was thinking, well, this doesn't quite line up because, when we were doing this submission deal out here in Oregon with Flow Combat, we were talking to you about taking on Jake Shields, and you weren't flinching at all. You're like, oh, wow, what an opportunity. Let me see what my schedule is. So when I read that thing with Matt, I'm like, now, if Nick was getting ready to take on Jake Shields in public, look, we all know how that one's probably going to end. All right, to your point, you're 48 years old. This isn't totally what you do. It's just something that you enjoy. It's like, hey, we all know this is going to end, and Nick's not flinching at all. So when I did read that, I thought, well, I don't know. That just isn't my experience with Nick. He doesn't really mind the competition.
Oh, I could care less. In fact, if one of the things I was going to talk to you about is if I roll with Jake, Jake's a lot bigger than me, but if I roll with Jake, or let's say I roll with Joe Lazone again, it has to be a situation where, like we did the first blog, where it would be a fun match to say, can Jake submit Nick in 5 minutes, 6 or 7 times? Because there's no way I can roll with Jake Shields. There's no way. And even someone like Joe Lazone, who is, how long has Joe Lazone been on the mats rolling? For 15 years now? The dude is black belt, high-level black belt expertise. But I would love to get back in there with Joe and see if I can stop him from tapping as many times as he did before. So, but no, I don't care. The only issue that I had with the grappling was that I wasn't told that Matt and I were going to go hard. Everything was like, hey, you guys are just going to go in there. Matt's going to seminar. You guys are going to flow a little bit. And I've rolled with Matt before. And I can tell you right now, the dude's too big for me. He's too good for me. He's too fast. He's too strong. And but the only issue I had with it is I wasn't told about it beforehand, and I was wearing my academies, Art of Jiu-Jitsu with the Mendez brothers. I was wearing their rash guard. And my concern and my fear was someone's going to take that video of us grappling, and they're going to chop it up, and they're going to put it on jiu-jitsu websites, and they're going to say, look at what happened. Serra BJJ can beat Mendez brothers BJJ. And it happened. It's out there. And, it's an uncomfortable situation for me with the brothers because they're like family to me. It's like, dude, just fucking tell me I'd have taken off my rash guard. I don't care.
No, I got it. And that's good respect by you.
Me being overly, a lot of people are like, oh, on the internet are like, oh, that's bullshit. You just got mad that Matt tapped you. I'm like, no, I did not. If you think about that logically. But yes, I'm overly considerate of other people that go on. I roll in competitions all the time. I just got done with Worlds, Master Worlds. I took third, which just goes to show I'm going against 45 to 50-year-old guys who are purple belts. I have no problem getting submitted against a guy, and those things go on the internet. I don't care, but I don't want to. It's not fair to me to put someone or someone's brand out there on this crazy show and in a light that may embarrass them. So, if people don't roll, then they don't understand. If people do roll and they're at an academy like that, then you can understand why I'm a little bit sensitive about that. I don't want to hurt my whole thing in life, Chael, is I don't want to hurt anybody. You know what I mean? And it's something that is I used to be, like when I was in high school, I used to be so conflict-oriented. Fist fights. I ended up in reform school when I was a junior. And I read this great quote by Muhammad Ali, and he said, listen, if you're still the same person that you were at 50, that you were at 20, you just wasted 30 years of your life. And so for me, it's one of those things where even with this whole thing with Matt, it's like the whole there are so many things that I could come out and say, like little bitch things that I don't want to do, because in my mind, one of the things that I've learned is that conflict debases you. Competition elevates us, but conflict, where you're walking around or having these arguments in your head, I like that. People that snap all the time, they're having an argument in their head 24/7. They're in fight or flight all the time. And it's one of the most damaging things from a physiological standpoint, much less an emotional and even a spiritual standpoint. So so this whole thing with Matt, I've really been like, okay, how am I going to deal with this when I don't want to come back and act like some guy whose girlfriend just broke up with him, so I'm going to go on the internet and I'm going to be that bitch who's on there writing all this shit. I don't want to do it because I feel like it debases me. So that's like this whole quagmire. But that's what I like as a writer. I like the fact that it is this situation where it's so weird there's no right or wrong, on as far as what I can do. What should I do? How should I act? I love that kind of shit.
Yeah, and
I couldn't buy this shit.
And I'll tell you, Nick, you are right. Like, it is kind of a hard thing to respond to. It isn't the world's biggest deal, but it can blow up into one when you start addressing it. And all of a sudden you're going, hey, this was a small thing in my life, but let me just tell you what happened to set the record straight. And then all of a sudden you validate it. You know, it can get tough. Let me ask you this. When you read all this stuff and you kind of got blindsided by it, have you reached out to Matt? Have you texted him or talked to him at all or gone, hey, what happened? Or did you just let it go?
I just let it go. It was one of those things where the tasing thing wasn't addressed. I was like, Dana and I had a big argument about it, which Matt reported that we almost got in a fight. And then the MMA media picked up and said, Nick the Tooth got kicked off the show because he almost got in a fist fight with Dana. That is how, and see, for me, I've never experienced how weird and crazy and stupid media is now. You guys experience it because you're fighters and you're in the limelight. For me, once again, one of these novel, awesome experiences that I'm like, wow, man, people just don't, and you know what's crazier, Chael? Not one reporter reached out to me to talk or get my side of the story, even though it was picked up by all this news media. The only one that did was Jonathan Schrager at Mixed Martial Arts Underground, and that was it. He was the only one that reached out to me, and that was even more, enlightening than the controversy. So,
yeah, no, you do get a lesson in that, and it changes the way you look at the whole world. Where you go, so many for me, Nick, or it used to be this way. Now I got my lesson. But for me, I thought, man, I have to question now everything. Everything I see in the media. It used to be, well, if a reporter or the media or a reputable brand picks it up, they did their vetting, and this is the truth. And I would see politicians year after year, campaign after campaign, come out and go, that isn't true, so-and-so's lying. And I used to always think, nah, nobody's lying. If it's on the media and the guy in the fancy suit is reporting it, if it can make it to a .com, if it can make it through a reputable brand, it's been vetted, this is reality. It's like, no, that's not true. They will just throw things out there. There'll be no retraction, no follow-up. They hear something, they write their story, and move on with their day. And that is a lesson that I think that you left with here, too, that, man, things can get put out there, and you're going, wait a second, you didn't even call me to get the other side.
It's all clickbait right now. I tell you what, man, and it really makes me very concerned and fearful for these next few generations coming up because, in our country, they consider, the media, the press, journalism to be the fourth estate, next to our government, keeps everything in check. That's why we had Watergate. That's why we had the Iran-Contra affair, because journalists were there doing the hard work. There's no money anymore. And so what is going to happen, we're starting to see it now with all the clickbait, but what happens in 10 years? What happens in 15 years? Politicians, no one gets checked on anything. It's crazy times, man, for sure.
Yeah, that's true. So I would hate to think, but I have to ask this. I would hate to think that this interferes with you and Dana's lifelong friendship. But I have to ask you. I mean, did it, or is everything fine there?
No, and it's something I've been pissed off. I'm sure he's pissed off that we have definitely hit a road bump or a bump in the road. But I have conflict with my brother all the time too. So I mean, Dana's like my brother. I love him, and I'm sure we'll both get past it. But like I said, we're like brothers in the sense that we've had issues before. We've had pretty big issues before. So I think it's just one of those things. Yeah, I love him, and it's friendship. That's what friendships are all about. Those things make you stronger when you come back together.
Yeah, that's right. That's exactly right.